Welcome to Historia Popularis, a people's history channel. I am your host, Zillian, and we bring history to life from below. In my introduction video, I touched upon my commitment to spotlighting stories from marginalized people. But where better to start than with my own journey? Allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Zillian, the face behind this channel, and from Denmark. While I utilize AI voice generation to bring my story and other stories to life, I am very much a real person. My personal mission with this channel is to give voice to the stories of those who have been marginalized and overlooked, sharing their experiences and perspectives. This is my 35 years of struggles in a society primarily designed for neurotypical and able-bodied cis people. I have been excluded and alienated from society and placed on early retirement benefit. With a lot of time and little money, I decided that I want to bring our stories to life. My story told here in this video is originally translated from my interview with a newspaper owned by my Communist Party and adapted with approval from the journalist. I was born with the severe and quite rare charge syndrome. Only about 5 children a year are born in Denmark, and their conditions vary greatly from person to person. Most people with charge are deaf or hard of hearing. This includes myself. I was born strongly hard of hearing, but identifies as deaf. I also have low vision, loss of other senses such as balance, and have an autism diagnosis. While I can see with glasses, my disability falls under the definition of deafblind. This includes deaf or hard of hearing people who are also blind or partially sighted and or have loss of other senses. A childhood with many obstacles. Part 1. Throughout my childhood, adolescence, and youth, I have experienced systemic violence from a society that is not designed for people with disabilities. For example, the municipality where I grew up in Denmark thought that I should just be integrated into regular kindergartens and primary schools. My parents were given no information on how to cope with a disability like mine and had to seek out knowledge themselves. It was really bad for me in kindergarten. It was horrible. After a long struggle, my parents got in touch with a psychologist who told the municipality that I needed to learn sign language. It was only then that things changed, and I went to a kindergarten for the deaf when I was 5 years old. Later, I went to a central class for the deaf students at primary school. When I finally learned sign language, my language developed quickly. Situations like this, where public authorities would rather listen to the expert instead of me or my parents, is also a thing I've experienced all my life. Although being in a class with other deaf people was a great help, I did not do well at school. I struggled with social relationships, made no friends, and was bullied because I was different. At the time, I didn't realize that an autism disorder was also part of my medical profile. When I was a child, I was really fond of Harry Potter. I could escape from reality into another world. Today, I hate Harry Potter because the author is transphobic. However, my current political views have also colored my perception of the books, which I now see as a reflection of the author's views. Gender fluidity. Part 2. Biologically, I am intersex. This means that gender is fluid. Biological sex is not sharply defined and cannot be placed in one category or another. I can't produce testosterone and didn't reach puberty. Because I was born a boy, society perceived me as a boy, and I was put on testosterone treatment. Gender identity was never discussed, and there was no mention in my medical records that I was intersex. This, of course, affected my puberty, and was another reason why I was different from the others and was bullied. Still, I felt it was wrong that I had to be forced into a certain box. Society also sees intersex as a disability that needs to be corrected. Like many intersex people, I also underwent surgery. In my case, however, the surgery was medically necessary to prevent serious health problems. Unlike many other surgeries on intersex people, which are often performed to conform their bodies to societal expectations without the informed consent from parents or the child, after primary school, I attended a boarding school for deaf. Here I came out as gay. There wasn't much information about intersex and gender identity on the internet at the time, unless I actually knew the terms and knew where to look for them. Life took a turn when someone from a club for LGBT plus deaf people came by, told me about being gay. With this newfound knowledge, I had go to library and look for information. I found many books about gays and lesbians. Back then, being transgender was shameful. It was something you had to hide. There might have been deaf people who were transgender, but I didn't meet them. Even the people from the LGBT plus club couldn't really help me in my search, as they had no knowledge of being transgender at the time. At the boarding school, I chose to say that I was gay, but at the same time I felt that it wasn't the right definition. Things didn't go very well at boarding school either. Because of my autism, I found it difficult to become part of the community. I didn't realize at the time I had autism, but I had a hard time reading social norms and making friends. I didn't join in when the others were partying. Therefore, I became isolated. During my time at boarding school and afterwards, I became interested in politics. My social criticism was fueled by the constant feeling that I had to constantly try to change myself to fit into the system. I wanted to change that, and at the age of 22, I joined the Red-Green Alliance, a Danish left-wing party. The Fight for a Place in the Society. Part 3. After finishing boarding school, I focused on completing an education. In 2009, I started a chef training program at a culinary school. This was my best year there. It was a good basic training course that I was very happy with. I got an apprenticeship at a social economy company that did catering and focused on the deaf people. It was really good, but I started to have problems with my balance and motor skills as a result of charge syndrome. I was also experiencing challenges with autism in a stressful work environment in the kitchen. This meant that I couldn't work in a kitchen and I had to stop the program. I was really sad. It was so disappointing. I didn't know what my future looked like now. I spoke to an educational counselor who recommended me to start an office training program because it was easy to find work in that field. However, the educational counselor just didn't know anything about the deaf community. I started the office training program, and I was really happy with the basic training course. Yet, it was the apprenticeship that was really bad. They didn't take my situation into account. I changed support person every year, and it was a very stressful environment with a lot of staff turnover. It was very messy, and I didn't learn what I needed to learn. I was also absent a lot because I wasn't feeling well. Despite these problems, I completed the 4-year office training program and barely passed the final exam. Now I had to enter the labor market and find a job. At this point, I realized that the educational counselor had given me the wrong guidance. It was very difficult for me as a deaf person to get an office job. Companies expect me to be able to talk on the phone, and I can't do that. They had a lot of prejudices about what deaf people can and cannot do. The fact that I had to bring a sign language interpreter with me was not something the workplaces were happy about either. I didn't manage to find a job, and I didn't get a response to my applications. After 6 months like that, I started it depressed. I felt like I was worth less and less. To move on, I started an upper secondary school. However, the state education grant was so low that I had to earn some money on the side. Thus, I tried to set up my own business where others could buy help with IT and bookkeeping. But again, I found that no one wanted to use a deaf person. I and other self-employed bookkeepers also faced stiff competition from companies that developed simple accounting softwares for small businesses that could replace external bookkeepers. I couldn't complete the upper secondary school. I had to quit after a year and closed my company. I was very depressed and went on sick leave. I got so bad that I was hospitalized in a psychiatric ward. It was all so difficult. I felt very bad and felt completely wrong. I didn't want to be a man and felt I was put in the wrong box. Politically, I had switched from the Red-Green Alliance to the Alternative Party, a Green part-time, but in the midst of my deep crisis, I chose to drop my political involvement completely and also withdrew from the deaf community, which I found it difficult to become a part of. This led to an even greater degree of isolation. The job center registered me as fit, despite my illness. Part 4. At the time, I was on sickness benefit and affiliated with the job center. From here, there was pressure to get back to work. This made the situation even more difficult. The job center ran like an assembly line where you just had to get back into the labor market. They sent me on an internship as a kitchen assistant, even though I said I couldn't work in a kitchen because of my disability. They just ignored that and sent me to a kitchen anyway. It was really hard and didn't work out. Suddenly, the job center announced that they now thought that I was healthy again and therefore no longer needed sickness benefits. I contacted my labor union. However, they didn't think I was well enough and said they couldn't help me as I wasn't entitled to unemployment benefits because I was ill. Then I was put on Social Security. I was on it for about 4 years. I complained to the National Social Appeals Board that the job center had registered me as fit. It took several years to deal with the complaint, but in the end I was successful. I got back on sickness benefit and was paid a lot of money. It was a big help because I had a big debt at the time. But the years before the decision from the National Social Appeals Board were very difficult. I couldn't cope anymore and was completely depressed. I had suicidal thoughts and dreams of being a woman instead of a man. I was socially isolated in my flat, which was a mess with leftovers and clutter. A very uncomfortable place. I just sat at home in the mess and played computer games and had lost the will to live. Just like the Harry Potter world of my childhood, I played the computer as an escape from reality. Ironically, many of the characters I played in computer games were women. This was an unconscious way of exploring my gender identity. During this period, I made a decision to stop testosterone treatment. It was a great relief to not have to take the injections. Shortly afterwards, I was finally assessed and received an autism diagnosis. It was also a relief to get an explanation for some of the severe problems in everyday life. Another positive thing happened in 2021 when I got a new apartment. A new start as a woman. Part 5. I had the opportunity for a fresh start and to put down roots in a new place. At the same time, I came out as a woman and slowly came back to the deaf community again. Then came the Ukraine war. Russia invaded Ukraine on the same day I got my first female sex hormone from a private medical clinic. Personally, I felt like I was finally allowed to be myself. But at the same time, the world was in chaos with war, climate crisis, Donald Trump, COVID-19, the new coalition government in Denmark, and so on. It affected me a lot. At the same time, the job center was still trying to get me back into the labor market. In 2022, I was sent on a vocational rehabilitation program with the aim of being prepared for a flexible job. I wanted to go to a private provider with knowledge about deaf people, but the job center refused for financial reasons. Instead, I went to a private provider that had no idea what to do with a person who is deaf, had autism, and in the middle of her transition to womanhood. I did their work and found myself a business that was started by deaf people using sign language. I was on unpaid internship there for 3 months. It was okay, but not a place where I wanted to work permanently. It was a wholesale business that imported accessories for the stores, and it was all about consuming as much as possible. Pure capitalism. The report from the private provider was not good enough for the job center. Therefore, I was sent out to another private operator. Again, the job center rejected this private provider for deaf people and instead used a private provider with knowledge of autism. The problem was that they only focused on my autism and didn't see the whole picture. They tried to find an internship, but again I realized that no one wanted a deaf-blind autistic person. Some companies gave blatantly discriminatory reasons for rejecting me. The situation changed for the better when I managed to get a 3-month internship at an association for deaf-blind people. It was a really good place where I felt I could contribute something and was a real help. But it wasn't possible to continue there after the unpaid internship. By the autumn of 2023, I had reached the point where I'd given up hope of joining the labor market. I applied for early retirement benefits. The job center assessed that her efficiency and ability to work was so low due to the various diagnoses that she was finally granted early retirement benefits in May this year after many exhausting years in the job center system. It's a huge relief. Now I no longer have to fight with the job center. I can do what I want and pursue my interests. I started this YouTube channel where I'll tell stories from marginalized sections of the population with a historical materialist perspective. My interest in history and my own experiences of marginalization are the driving force behind this project. Active Communist, Part 6. I am also active in my deaf community, and I decided to join the Kommunistisk Party last year, in 2023. I had known about the Kommunistisk Party for a long time, through my involvement in the Red-Green Alliance, but the revolution thing was a bit too violent. I thought that we must be able to make reforms within capitalism. The developments of recent years have shown me that the system cannot be changed from within. That's why I joined, and I'm glad that I've been welcomed in my party department and that I've been asked to help out at a newspaper owned by the party. The party looks at what I can contribute, not at my disability. That's very positive. Having landed in a good place after years of struggling with the system, I am ready to work to change society in both individual areas and in the big picture. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll subscribe to Historia Popularis, a people's history channel, and join us on this journey through history. As a deaf-blind creator, all of our content is AI voice generated, ensuring accessibility for everyone. To support our work and help us continue to bring these stories to life, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Historia Popularis. Your financial support is crucial as it enables us to cover the costs of research, production, and technology, allowing us to produce more content and improve the quality of our videos. Together, we can ensure that every voice is heard and every story is told. Remember, history belongs to all of us.